Well, hello and welcome to Audionautic Deep Space Network, episode 101. This is the Independent Musician's Guide to Production and Promotion. And today, Curtis will be walking us through and giving us a deep dive into his Ableton and Novation Launchpad workflow. We'll talk routing hardware with Ableton and how it opens up creativity when in songwriting mode. Next, we'll have some pretty crazy AI news that could have some long-term ramifications for music making. So we're going to talk about what it is and then what ramifications could happen with it. And we want to hear from all of you about it because these are crazy. What was that, Eon Lake? I know Eon Lake's not happy about what's going on with these, but and rightfully so, I think, when we get to it. It's kind of crazy. I mean, it's more than kind of. It's interesting, but we'll talk about it soon, but we want to first get into what's going on with Curtis and his Ableton routing and setup, because he's been posting live streams every week and turned those into a bit of a collection of, I don't know how you want to call it, down-tempo, trippy, trip hop, right? Maybe beats and things like that. But he's got quite an interesting setup that merges some hardware with MIDI controllers and then all controlled with Ableton. And as most or all of you know, I'm a bit of an Ableton noob, so he's going to explain it to me as someone who's not familiar with Ableton at all. So if you're in that same camp and just want to see what he does and whether it's any different or offers anything different compared to the DAW you're using, that's what we're hoping to get to here. So Curtis, if you don't mind, let's start with the with your Ableton workflow.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Nice to see everyone here. It's wonderful. Yeah. So a bit of preamble. If you want to bring up what we've got here, this is a template that I've been building, and it's a continuous evolution of what I've been building since I started these live streams back in February last year. Right. So it's kind of an evolution. As you can see, it kind of goes back a bit in this
Quite a few
on this
versions,
site.
huh?
quite a few versions, but this is essentially it. And it started with 8 channels, and now, because I've got 2 launch controls, we have a maximum of 16, which in theory, and I stress in theory, means that I don't go more than 16 channels. That's a tough one to carry on with, but it is a good one. So Ableton newbie sitting right here, what do you want to see first, Sam Walker?
Okay, well, I think most important to me is just kind of like the routing you have for setting up the MIDI, how you have it controlling everything. Because when I watch your stream, I really like the way you're I think you're using it both chromatic, like doing a chromatic mode, but you're triggering samples, doing all that type of stuff. So walk me through, if you don't mind, the routing of your MIDI controllers, and then however else you want to explain kind of where you go from there and how it streamlined your creative process, your beat making process.
Okay, that's a good one. Well, okay, PC just here, so you can see in the panels here. I'll start with the Launchpad Pro Mark III, and then I've got 2 launch controls. These launch controls are fairly standard. As I've got the normal mapping system
Let
here.
me just really quick before you continue there,
Yeah.
so we can see it a little better.
Get rid of There we go. So get rid of the laptop. There we go. So yeah, so we've got the launch control, which is sitting here, which is where we're on here like this. And I've got 2 of these launch controls just sitting right here. And they're basically tuned or they are routed the same way each time, right? So as you can see, wonderful masking tape. Masking tape is my best friend. And they all kind of sit
Any
in
musician's best friend.
Exactly. Yeah. So you got here, and then I've got a user. It's not running. It's because it's not run right now. But there is a user preset base which is mapped to an instance of Vital, essentially, so that you can see that, and so I can manipulate. I'm still kind of working out the kinks of that one, so that's not for show and tell just yet. But,
can you say what the? I know you have the launch. What is the one with all the knobs? Is that launch controller? What's the name of that one?
This is the Launch Control XL from Novation. And then this is the launch pad. So this is the one for finger drumming. This is the one for moving around. As you can see, I've got color-coded squares on the bottom, as you can see, so I can kind of don't get lost. This kind of tells me where I am. This allows me to map out. And then this is like your traditional mixer. That's kind of the vibe, or that's kind of like the idea how we're trying to get this done, essentially.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So now I'll share I'll share Ableton back. Now let's talk, if you don't mind, about the routing of it in Ableton, because this is where it gets really interesting, in my opinion, from seeing your streams.
I always try to keep it as varied and as open as possible. The idea is that nothing is set in stone. Nothing is, as much as possible, nothing's pre-programmed, and it can be for anything. So I always have color codings on everything, and I find that's really useful. So, for example, our first 4 instances are drums, and it's always in white. Bass is always in orange. My pads, or my Novation Ultranova, is always in yellow. My guitar is always in turquoise, and then I've got leads in green and keys, which is different to leads, in dark blue. And that's always the case across all of my production and everything like that. So usually when I'm anxious and stressed out, which I usually am on a live stream, let's face it,
I feel you. Yeah.
I can see these colors and I can kind of hit these things, right? And again, the idea is meant to be as open as possible. So you've got some MIDI and you've got some audio, obviously. And you can see down here, if I elongate these out just a little bit, perhaps.
Yeah, I can full
bring
screen
this
as
out a
well.
little bit. There we go. We can do that. So we bring it out a little bit. As you can see, everything's kind of rooted kind of about the same way. The way that, let's start with audio, because I think that's the simplest. The nice thing about my audio is that everything is going through the mixer. Everything's going on the mixer, which is off screen right now. So luckily, anything that I move in terms of audio, such as the Ultranova or the monologue or the sampler or a guitar or something like that, that always goes through the same way. So you can see around here, the guitars are the same. Nova always goes through 1 and 2. Got bass audio and drums audio, which goes through. Well, the audio for the drums for some reason go through 3 and 4, but it shouldn't. It should go through 1 and 3. So maybe I've changed things recently. So that's the easy bit. And then the MIDI is where it gets a bit more complicated in that such. So for the drums, you have a different routing in the MIDI for drums than you do if you're using the launch pad as a pad, or if you're using it for an instrumentation, for example. Are you with me?
Yep.
Yeah. So, for example, these two, I can highlight these two if I wanted to. Oh, let's get rid of that. If I wanted to, I could highlight this guy and I could highlight this guy at the same time. If they're not being exclusive, one here and one here, I can highlight them both. That's the one. And it would allow me to play both of them at the same time, but they wouldn't actually interfere with one another, which is quite nice in that regard. So this is quite useful for if I'm doubling up pads, for example, or if I'm doubling up on I tend to double up on leads quite a bit, for example. So it allows me to play one lead line, capture the MIDI, but then spread it across 2 different channels, which is quite nice and quite useful in that regard. Yeah. So that's kind of like the routing, how it kind of goes out. I do have a MIDI. I call it a MIDI merge. I know that you guys call it something different, but I love calling
It's
the MIDI
proper term so that it's not confusing.
Exactly. I have one of those boxes which allow me to kind of change the MIDI and where they go, for example, and it's all 4.
Yeah, and it's a MIDI hub to
MIDI hub. Yeah,
to clarify. For I know he likes his alliteration, but it's a MIDI hub so that he can change routings and things like that with MIDI. Curtis, if you don't mind, can I just read a couple of chats really quickly, because we went right through the intro due to all those technical issues before our show, because what's ADSN without technical difficulties? But really quick, we'll take a break from Ableton. I just want to say hello to everybody in the chat. We've got Smiling Errors, we've got Bendu, we've got Survey Channel. Let's make this happen. I mean, we're here. We're making it happen, right? We got through the internet crashing on Curtis's end. We got through it. And we've also got Abby in the chat. How are you all doing? Oh, yeah. And, of course, Lars is both in the chat and in the green room. He'll hop in during the news segment when we talk about AI, because I know Lars has quite a lot to say about AI. But he says that your workflow is way more organized than his. So that's as organized as a Dollar Tree, Survey Channel says. And Smiling Air says MIDI face. Yeah, that's the truth. That's the proper, not MIDI hub, not MIDI merge. MIDI McMIDI face. You get 3 for the alliteration. So that must intrigue Curtis, I'm sure. All right, so let's get back into it. So we kind of got the routing here. So what does this all allow for you when we're talking like actually making the music now? You're doing loops, you're doing all that type of stuff. You have all these MIDI channels that look kind of like mixers, MIDI hardware, I should say. So what does that allow you in terms of bringing, I don't know, is tactility a word, but tactile like response and things like that to this soft synth and plug-in world?
Well, yeah, it allows me to not basically use the screen much at all, which is quite nice. Like, so if you come back down to the bottom here on the launch control itself, you can see that these buttons here you can shift between the different sections. You can shift between the different channels. And you can record and you can solo out. You can mute them, etc. And which means you're not kind of like grabbing your mouse and just clicking on a screen, which kind of ruins the magic in a way in that regard, I feel. It's necessary, especially in production and in the mixing stages and stuff, to be sitting there doing your thing. But when you're in a flow state, or trying to be at least, I mean, maybe that's the point, you're not in a flow state if you're trying, but you know what I mean? If you're
Do or
creating.
do not, man. There is no try.
Exactly. It allows just to kind of do the thing. So I can just punch in a channel straight away, for example, channel 5, which is my base audio. Just by hitting that, for example, I can arm it. Maybe I do this one because it's a better example. My MIDI bass, for example, I can arm it without even looking at it, and then I can immediately, using the buttons, I can immediately send it to the returns wherever I wanted to off the bat. So I can put something in, I can create it looping, and instantly I can synthesize it, and instantly I can start kind of mixing it in a way from what you can see over here. I used to create a subgroup for lows, mids, and highs. I do that less than I used to, but it's kind of useful to create these little sub buses and these subgroups so that I can instantly start creating a bus for the drums, for example. So I can saturate them and make them nice and thick straight away. If I've got 2 basses, for example, putting them into one bus and making sure that they're nice and glued together with a compressor, that kind of thing. So that comes straight off the bat. So I'm not muddling around with getting straight into the notion of getting bogged down in the mix. I'm just kind of mixing things as they go, which is really fun for me because that's what Ableton's really good at, I feel.
Yeah, I think you're right, at least from my small knowledge of Ableton, as I used it for live performance. So have used it, but not for like song creation. Got an interesting one from Smiling Ears: programmable MIDI keys on your mixer. What a simple, good idea. Yeah, definitely. So I did want to ask you, so that I know I keep blanking on the term. That's the launch controller, I believe you said.
Mhm.
How much does that go for?
It's about 3K. So it's just over $100, $120, I think, American
Okay.
USD, something like that. So
Because that
uh,
that would be interesting even for, I mean, because of MIDI CC and stuff, like a DAW is set up as well, even because you can CC all that type of stuff in the mixer. Like I'm just thinking with the Digitact, even controlling all these different set, or the SP, because I just found out you can CC the SP's effects to the Digitact. So there'd be a lot of cool stuff to have that kind of in any setup. But I mean, it makes most sense with the way you've got it set up. This is why I'm so intrigued by your setup. But uh in a DAW, having this tactile, like just getting away from the screen is such a nice way. And then you can still have all the controls that you want because everything's programmable. So it's very, very cool. Looks like Survey Channel is in need of your template knowledge for his Ableton templates. He also
very happy
said
to do that.
use the launch control in Reaper for my live set. Ah, very cool. Okay, so yeah,
There
I
you go.
need to, whenever I
Okay.
have some budget, instead of buying more gear, I might look into that because I'm thinking maybe using it for both. All right, I know you've got some sound and video demos of how this all works in true application, but is there anything else I haven't asked so far yet that you want to cover before we start showing those demos?
I've got a thing about the actual racks themselves. I don't know
Okay.
if that's useful. If you want to get rid of us, because just because, or put us to the side or something like that.
I can
Um,
do this or I
there
can
you
full
go.
screen, whatever your
There you
choice
go.
is. This is
Cool.
bigger to show the rack. So yeah.
That's the main thing. So one thing I've done, and I kind of shot myself in the foot a little bit. This is a work in progress. But one of the things I did was create these big instrument racks here. which is again, in the name of anything can be anything, and it could go anywhere. Instead of me dragging in a VST or dragging in something, I have it all here ready to go. Decommissioned, as in it's switched off, so it doesn't take up too much processing power. But the idea is essentially that if I'm making something and I go, oh, okay, I need a nice space pad, for example, I can go straight across to triple cheese because I might use triple cheese for something like that. Oh, you can't see that right now because I'm showing window and not screen, but you can see where I'm coming from. If like, oh, okay, I need a nice vintage pad, for example, I'll go to OctaveCat.
Oh
Or
yeah.
if I want to do some synthesis, I'll go to Vital, for example. And that goes across. So like if I go across to my MIDI here, for example, these are the 4 synths I tend to use for bass. And right now you can see I've got this kind of like amalgamation of stacked basses, which are already in place. So while I've only got one bass channel, I'm actually mixing 3 basses at the same time in a way, which is nice and fun. And again, it works for keys as well. So I've got complete control in there. I've got drift from Ableton's stock drift plugin, which is quite interesting, but also Analog 5, for example. And it allows for just off the bat, it just allows for pure kind of creativity just to fly, not thinking too much about dragging stuff in, trying to keep things away from the computer as much as possible. A few clicks here and there before going back to the keys, or a few bits here before coming back to it. All of the parameters on the effects chain, for example, can be operated by the launch control as well. As you can see here, this filter, for example, and once enabled, for example, you can play with the wet. We can play with the wet and dry of a reverb, for example, not having to sit there with your mouse and do this, which I do a lot in production and when I'm mixing. But when you're just beat making and when you're coming up with ideas, in my experience, you don't really want that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm.
We do have a question from Lars that I think anybody that knows Curtis's production will know the answer to, but I think it is worth asking. Why so many basses? This dude, as the mastering engineer for his music, I can give an answer, Curtis, if you want me to.
Go for it.
The man loves his bass layers.
I
He'll
really
send
do.
me stuff,
I
and I'm
really
like, dude, the bass is too loud. He's like, oh, I'll lower the 9th layer. I'm like,
One
nice.
of
Bendu also commented, "Big Bottom drives him out of his mind."
As if I'm ever in my mind. Yeah. It's fun. I like playing around with basses, especially big fan of drum and bass, big fan of psytrance, and that's all about the low end. And my consistent thing is learning to make bass sound good and thick and full without interfering with each other, and really having a harmony between that like 40 hertz right through to around about 150 and trying to create that nice foundation. I'm not very good at it. I'm deaf in one ear and I find that a struggle. So it's like a consistent thing for me. It's good fun.
That's good training, right?
Oh, always good. So yeah. So yeah. Is there anything else you want to know? I've got some videos to share.
I think we should
About
see
what
the videos, get that idea of what it sounds like, and then if you have any questions, besides why so many bases, or Eon Lake, if you have anything, we'll get to it after we check out the demo, because I think it's best to see this in action. Because when I watch those live streams, I'm like, look at how it's so seamless, right? You know, it's just like flowing, but you're doing so many different things because of how you have it all parametered and EQ'd and not EQ'd. I'm reading a comment, so that changed it. But yeah, we'll get to that comment after this. Let's check it out. So which one do you want to play first?
I'll start with habitual loops because I think it's an earlier one. Is when things are rough all the time with my live streams, but this one is particularly rough. But it's a really interesting. I'll go with Beach Bum second because it's the newest one. But this is from Habitual Loops, and this is the first track on the EP, which released last week using a variation of this template. Let's start with that.
All right, perfect. All right, walk us through it, my friend.
So one of the nice things about that one in particular is that these effects chains that I have are pretty stock, right? So you can group these all in, and they're on every track. So a big fan, biggest something I'm a big fan of is the shifter, which you saw in the bottom right hand corner over there. And I love it so much, the fact that I've actually got more masking tape delineating where you can find it. And it's great for just making something and then turning it into something completely different, so to speak. So it's just a case of just taking an effects. I try to keep it as general as possible, but also that runs into problems with spacing, and that's what I'm currently working on. But the effects chain and how that works and where that is in regards to everything else and how quickly that can be affected is a really nice way to, again, live looping, putting something in, putting something down, and then distorting the crap out of it, to use the PG term, um, to go into a different space in that regard. And yeah, and it's if you tune into my live streams, you know that it's a little bit rough sometimes. It's not it's warts and all, and that's kind of by design. I'm not trying to make something polished. It's kind of grim sometimes. You can be listening to a loop for a long time, and then suddenly this like the weird sawtooth comes in where an init patch I've just loaded up comes through. And it can be a bit disconcerting, but that's kind of the process, and that's the organic process by which I make the music, and it's kind of it's honest in that regard, and it's kind of that's that initial exploration phase before everything gets so polished and everything's so nice. You're just kind of throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. That's the way I like to see it, and at least.
Yeah, no, I was trying to listen and type this, so I accidentally messed up the link. But I put his the link in a second one. It's right there if you want to check out the album Intervoidal that has that song and a couple others from his live streams. The link is there, and I'll put it in the description and show notes if you're listening back on Apple Music or Spotify. Which, if you are, consider leaving a rating. It helps a ton. And thanks to everybody who listens over there. But do you want to say anything more before we go to Beach Bum? Now, you said this is an evolved, it's a while after that for those earlier live streams. So what's changed in terms of refinement or whatever have you?
Using utilizing the launchpad more, I think. I think when I started, it was more about different instrumentation, different things, bits and bobs. And I was using the launchpad merely as a way to create the loops and move through the project and move down. But with and I was using it for drums. I was using it for drums, but nothing else really. But more recently, I've been getting and dabbling more with kind of like note mode and scale mode and things like that and moving through. I always used to think that I was cheating, to borrow that phrase. I was cheating to kind of use it that way. I should be using proper keys and I should be moving between chords and stuff like that. And there is space for that. But more recently, I've been trying to be kind, and I've been utilizing things like the note mode, the chromatic mode, the sequencer mode to use it as an actual thing to trigger and solo and use it and play by squares as opposed to play by notes. And that's been a nice change, I think.
Yeah, I like that, and that you're overcoming that kind of self-imposed, I don't know what you call it, not limitation, but like self-imposed rule that, oh, it's got to be on the keys or something. I know what you mean. Maybe I'm just like that too, but I think a lot of us probably have some sort of weird self-imposed, oh, it's got to be this, or never play in C major because it's easy, or so, all these random things. But it's like whatever gets you creating and inspires you and gets the sounds in your head or wherever have you out and into the world. That's what I'm learning matters. And it sounds like, and I'm happy to hear that that's kind of where you're getting to too. Before we show Beach Bum though, we have a question from Hydro Fighter, one of our patrons. First, he says, sorry, I'm in and out of the show due to work. We miss you, man. We'd love to have you back on the show sometime, but I know work is work, but welcome. We're happy to have you with us. But he asks, are you mapping effects chains to macros?
Mapping effects change to macros. I have a user patch where I've mapped Vital and all the parameters for Vital itself. The effects chains themselves you can do with the launch control just by holding down device, for example, and then just cycling through and finding it yourself, and it's already mapped itself. If that makes sense. So I'm not doing the mapping, but it is already mapped. So if I want the shifter, or if I want to blend in a bit of delay, for example, all I have to do is go over, select it, and I can find the knob and make it through, and I can switch and I can change it myself without having to do it myself, if that makes sense. Yeah, so it's already there. It's it's built for Ableton. It's built for that regard. So it's already predetermined.
Very cool. And on the topic of laws and self-imposed laws, Bendu says there is no cheating. Low effort beauty is still beautiful. Exactly. Yeah,
That's so true.
exactly.
So there is no
Leon, like I know
cheating.
you've been pretty silent before we show that last demo.
There's a good reason for that.
I know, but I want to hear from you as a fellow, well, not fellow for me, but as a fellow Ableton user with Curtis, or colleague of Ableton with Curtis. Do you have anything you want to ask him or add on to or embellish?
Do you know what?
Briefly,
I'm genuinely struggling with it because I've watched the live streams and I always assumed that you know, the laptop's being used as kind of a mixer and a bit of a looper as well, and a way of just getting content into that template so that it plays and you can add more content and so on. But I've not spent a lot of time actually looking at what the template looks like, or the full horror of its complexity, which, you know, I'm very much into. I love the idea of your laptop or your studio as an instrument as opposed to a load of interconnected things, and I love how it's bringing everything together and making it more of a human interface so that you can just create, you know, with less limitation. And I like the fact of how it's evolved from when you first started talking about it and doing it. But yeah, I mean, actually looking at it, it's quite mind-boggling to actually wrap your brain around what's in that template and all the effects and everything. It must. I can't imagine how long it took to build the template. I mean, obviously, it's
and learn to perform it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's a work in progress, but then again, it's a work in progress informed by actually, you know, using it in anger and seeing what else it needs. And I love that. I love the fact that it's an evolving thing, that, you know, it's like a Curtis interface. It's I'm just,
It's
yeah,
also
I was a little bit quiet because I'm just thinking,
You're
wow.
taking it in, huh?
Well, yeah, and trying to process what I'm seeing.
All right, well, let's give your brain a break and watch
Yeah.
this. Well, actually, it might make it worse, but let's watch this video, and then we'll try to see if you can process it, or if we're gonna come back and Eon Lake's head is just gonna explode. All right, any preamble you want to add before we show this one, Curtis?
This is only in the fact that this is where I've learned that, okay, so the template itself, it got almost too big and it kept crashing and it took ages to load up and I was getting frustrated and I was losing myself. So this is from 2 weeks ago, I believe, and it's where I've started to skim down a little bit and start to get rid of some of the stuff and remove a few bits and bobs. But yeah, that's the only other thing. And this was being a lazy producer as well. This, in the name of being the lazy producer, it's quite fun. So I'll play it now.
All right, like the vocal sample, very different vibe from the previous demo you sent or shared.
I think the onus of this is I'm going back on all my rules that I started, which is really nice evolution for me. I used to be a case of, if I can play it, I won't sample it. I'll play it, and these days it's just sampling everything that can come through. But yeah.
Oh, were those keys not by you? Was that a sample? The keys?
You're gonna okay. Don't judge me on this one. The whole idea was being the lazy producer. It was MIDI chords from ChatGPT, and I've got a load of MIDI.
I'm not judging you, man. Wait, did you get the MIDI from the? Oh, did you use MIDI chords from a chord pack or something? But you asked GPT for the MIDI or for the chords?
Yeah. And I kind of played around with it and kind of moved it around to do my own thing. But that was a particular one where it's like, okay, how lazy can I be, and what do I need to do just to make this as easy and quick as possible? You know.
Okay, but is it lazy or is it getting past the sticking point to start doing the creating?
Mm.
I suppose you can see it that way. Yeah, I was just trying to go with. I was knackered on that day, and I was just going with, how can I do an hour's live stream and not collapse? That's all I was going with. And that was a good way of doing it. As that's what my live streams have become for me. It's like this notion of, okay, I've got an hour to do, and I've got to do it. And sometimes I really enjoy it, and sometimes I dread it. But it creates a different way of working. If you look at, like, it's not canon. This stuff isn't canon, Curtis. It's like, it's stuff that it's being created, and it's a repetition of structure and of how to build a track and make it work, right? And kind of form, not formulaic, but kind of look through the pieces as I continue to teach this and impart this onto other people. It's like, okay, I better know my stuff. My point is that it's that repetition, and it's that repetition of kind of dissecting different genres and different ideas. And it just so happened to be that was a week that I was being lazy. And I was like, I got to do this. So I'm going to do it, you know?
Yeah, that's what I mean, though. You got through the sticking point and did something. So it looks like chat is very intrigued at the notion of bringing up ChatGPT. So I think Lars may have gotten a little bit triggered. And wait till he comes on, because we're gonna just bombard him with AI after AI news. You know, he's in for quite the treat as someone who's not a fan of AI. Smiling Airs, this is what I find interesting. Thinks it's lazy. So that's interesting. But I mean, I don't know. I think it's an interesting point. Like Curtis was saying, he wanted to do this. He had this thing that he wanted to do and get through it. So rather than just cancel it and not make a track or something, he just found a way around what was getting him stuck at that point and then kept making. So he still made a track and still did all the crazy stuff. I saw there was some automation on the EQ that was moving around and all that stuff. So I don't know. That's what I'm asking. Like, is it lazy or is it just getting through a sticking point and then creating? Because you're still doing all the creating. Yeah, maybe you had that, but it would be the same as if you just started with some samples, chopped them up, and made a song in that same way. So
it had a
different
lovely
workflows.
tonality though as well. It was thick, but not too woolly, and it was warm, and it had a lot of space in it without being too bright or harsh or out of the box. You know, it had a really good vibe going. So I mean, sometimes you just need a little push to get going. I've used random stuff or chords out of an application before just to start something, and I've binned them off later once I've got going. But
Yeah,
it's just a way of, you know, pushing the boat out, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just getting
getting
started.
offshore.
Yeah, getting
once
through
you're
that
rowing or whatever, or under wind, whatever. You know, you can. You don't have to keep anything that you start with. Sometimes it's just about getting starting, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And Smiling Air says, right, but effort levels are not a reflection on output, just talking about the input. Oh no, I get it. I'm not sure I see it in that same way, because if you can just get past whatever's holding you back, then you're still creating. You get to still make something rather than just getting frustrated and not doing anything that day. You've worked the neurons, you've worked the muscle memory you got past where you were stuck and then you started doing stuff. Not saying I'm right, not saying I'm wrong, you're wrong, right? It just I think it's different for everybody, but if you can get to creating, whatever's holding you back from getting to creating, in my book, that's still that's a good thing. And I don't know if I'd necessarily call it laziness. I think it's just like, I mean, it depends. It depends on the full, I guess, the final, like, you know, where you took it, what you did with it. But interesting. Looks like Survey Channel says the mega MIDI chord pack for vibing producers. Jonathan Good says, hi, all. Apologies, I'm late. I think it's good to maybe generate ideas, but then only use it as a springboard for you to use as a stepping stone. Yeah, definitely. Very interesting. And Spot here says, if a man tells me he was being lazy, I'm not arguing with him. Yeah, no worries. It just got me thinking more, not necessarily him. If he thinks he's lazy, then he is. But I just think it's interesting because I like that idea, though. If you're stuck on something, if you feel terrible, but you want to create that day, or you feel the urge to create, but are stuck, it's like, well, here's, you know, there's always something you can do, or just sit at the piano and hit a few notes and sample that and then flip it and do whatever. Like, there's always something. Survey Channel says, I've earned laziness sampling off floppy disks on the S900. If I want to find ways around, I will. Ooh, I love those. Yeah.
I'll teach you that, if anything. Well, I think that also it's a lot of this doing music thing is about, you know, a regular workflow and putting in the effort and always being there and doing it. And, you know, that was in the name of doing that, wasn't it? It's about having a discipline, because, you know, when you become mega successful, you'll have no time for making music. You know, you'll need to put the effort in and do these little sessions, even if they're short, but you've got to just show up all the time and get it done. It's not like, you know, well, I'll do music when I'm really inspired and, you know, and pigs are flying and everything. It's like, well, it's got to happen all the time. You've got to find a way of accessing it, and it's a way in, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely. I think there's always that 5-minute rule. I forget who said it now, but there's that notion of if you're not feeling it, if you're not in the mood, or if you're not feeling inspired or whatever, just try something for 5 minutes and just do something for 5 minutes. You know, play with a synth or just kind of write a few notes down, just tickle the ivories or whatever you want to call it, and see what happens after 5 minutes. If after 5 minutes you're still not feeling it, put it away. But probably most of the time you won't. You'll get into the groove and stuff like that. I think it's very easy to get discombobulated with the idea of making something you're always going to be inspired by. Because, like, okay, so Beach Bum, for example, right? I wasn't feeling particularly inspired in that regard at all. But I just wanted to learn a bit more about tropical house. To me, the history of tropical house is fascinating, and so I was like, all right, fuck it. There's my one. There we go. We've just lost that. I was like, screw it. Let's go for.
Way to go. We don't get one. That's the thing. You misheard what Lars was bringing up, and my retort to brought up the topic. Yeah.
My apologies, brother. My humblest
Mark
apologies.
that in the timestamps for an edit.
I'll get it out. Yeah, 38.
Lars, you're clear, man. Don't worry about it. He says it wasn't me. It wasn't me. You're just chilling in the green room. You just planted that seed in his mind.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, it was a meditation on the history of tropical house, which is a really fascinating story to me. And now I've forgotten why I brought that up. But
so you could curse.
Yeah, yeah, that's what it was about.
Just throw off the algo, right? It was AI Lars. Survey Channel says, yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
He's gone rogue.
I love building this template. This template has become a bit of an extension of me, and I love building templates. I found almost to the extent where I have to stop myself from building templates, because at one point, it was like I'm enjoying building the template more, and I'm using it to procrastinate.
Yeah, should I build a template or should I make music? Right?
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with making it more efficient and making it better. So, on that note, if anyone would like me to build my template, or if you want to have this template, I'm more than happy to put it in the Discord channel. I'm not protective over it whatsoever. It's all just Ableton. So, and sharing the love. If anyone needs it, let us know and I'll put it in the Discord.
Yeah, if you're watching back, post it in the comments. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, head to the Discord, which is in the show notes, and comment there. Curtis, is there anything we haven't asked or that you just had pop up in your head as we talk that you want to share before we move on to the news and bring the patiently waiting Lars into the chat? Oh, Jan has something. Jan, I'm sorry, my friend. Please go on.
I have questions. So we know about the live streams and why you live stream and so on. But you know, obviously, new EP out. Obviously, it generates a huge amount of source material to be able to use for you know, working into songs and so on. But how is the approach different of taking that and actually you're thinking, right, well, now I'm going to make a song or a song for release, or is it just you work on them, and if they turn out well, you think, oh, that one might go out. You know, what's the process to take this stuff that you created and then rework it for potential release, shall we say?
That's a good question, actually. I don't really think about it that way, in that sense. Like all of them, bar 3 or 4, they all get made into something. And that's kind of the fun of Intervoidal, the concept, because it can be anything. And sometimes it kind of works and it can be a track. Like I like 7 on the EP, for example. I think that turned out really nicely. And that's a big moment for me to say I like one of my own tracks.
Yeah, I know.
It's a big moment for me.
You,
but
man.
Yeah, personal
Growth.
growth.
Yeah.
But if once we get towards the end of the year when Intervoidal 3 comes out,
Mm,
it gets weird. It gets really weird, and it's not any. It's experimental. It's noisy. It's weird, and it's a very different way. So I basically, because I do one each week, it's a delay of around. It can be a delay of 5 months, 6 months before I return to the project file.
mm,
And by that point, I've forgotten it. So I open it up. It's like, oh, cool sounds, and then you start playing with the sounds, and it could be something already, something different,
mm,
And it has to be done. It has to be finished. And this is another thing. It's about the workflow, about the consistency. The song must be finished. And I think bar 2 or 3, I've said, I know, screw that. They're not very nice. There's nothing I can do that. But everything must get finished and everything must get made. And
mm.
that, again, that's my whole kind of thing about consistency, building tracks, learning more about structure, trying to build something more, and through that. I'm not sure if that answers your question or anything. But
Each
that's
step
kind
of
of
the process, presumably as well, because if you keep binning tracks off, then you're never really doing the last few steps, are you? You're not getting any practice there. So is it just more like about polishing and organizing then, and just the final touches, tidying things up a bit? Or are
in a
you
way, yeah.
actively remixing them sometimes? Does it vary?
I mean, it does. It very much varies on depending on what's going down, right? So I tell you what, if I share this, maybe you can see this instead. This is kind of where I go with this. I have a spreadsheet, and this is for if I come to Intervoidal, for example. I haven't done much with it so far, but this is Intervoidal 4 through 6, and then 7 through 9, for example, for next year. And these are all the ones that I've been making. Like Doom Baby, I made in like May last year, for example, and they must all go through this ticking off process, and they must all go through that, and they come down, and they will be finished. They must be finished, that kind of thing. And there's 14, so the idea is that there's 12 tracks and a couple of extras for the CD the following year, that kind of thing. And it's really an exercise in discipline, and it's really an exercise in showing up even when I don't feel like it or I'm feeling uninspired and stuff like that.
Which is very good practice. So one thing that you mentioned that I noticed, and that is a big trap for a lot of producers, is finished, the concept of finished. So for your intents and purposes and arguments, what's finished for these tracks? For me, when I'm doing ideas like this, it has to have a complete structure. It has to have the main melodic harmonic parts and some sort of beginning, middle, end, some sort of structure. It needs to be a self-contained idea that's sort of fully realized. Doesn't necessarily have to be mixed or mastered or whatever, but it has to be a relatively complete example of whatever the hell it was I was doing. But how would you define finished for this workflow?
When it feels like it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that's all. So like it can start as one thing and completely finish as something else. But if it feels like there's a story, if it feels like there's a progression of some form, I'm happy. That's all that matters to me.
Nice. All right. Well, I think that's like a massive topic we've covered, and I think we got a lot. So, Chad, if you have, or anybody listening back, if you have more you want to talk to Curtis about, hit him up in the Discord. Hit us up in the Discord about it. Discord link is in the description and show notes. And we can talk more about this if Curtis is willing in our patron star stream, which is coming up this Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific, same time we go live on these Wednesdays. So if you're in a different time zone, it's that time. Bit of chat before we move to the news and bring Lars in, which we've got to make sure, because chat was mentioning, Survey Channel mentioned AI Lars, and Survey Channel's thinking Lars should build a AI deepfake of himself for the round robins. Lars says that, I mean, or that which is acting as Lars says, how do you know I haven't already? And I was going to mention, but Smiling Errors beat me to it. It's the hands. So I guess anytime Lars comes on the show, we got to have him show the hands. That's the test. And then just about the spreadsheets before we move on. I had the same thought. You have a spreadsheet for your projects? And Smiling Earth says, does the
Nice.
spreadsheet make sure the minimum amount of basses are included in each track? Yeah, that's a good question.
One
Survey
tick.
Channel,
You tick.
there's 4 check marks to make sure at least 4, and there's a 5th one in case there any overlap or overuse. Survey Channel says, look at this guy building templates, spreadsheets. Get this man a coding terminal. Bendu says, I actually have an Ableton project that is very similar to your spreadsheet.
I want to
And
see
lastly,
that.
I like this one from Jonathan. I think the ability to push yourself to finish a track, certainly if it requires a lot more work than normal, is a real skill and helps musicians think about the flow of a track overall. Definitely. All right, so let's bring in Lars and let's do the news. We might have to truncate and just do one of the topics and do the other one the next day, because I know we're running a bit long, but that's okay. We'll see. If we can fit them both, we'll fit them both.
As long as we talk about AI, I'm happy.
Yeah, I figured. Well, they're both AI topics, but much to the chagrin, I'm sure, of Lars. But let's bring Lars in, and then we'll start talking. Lars is one of our patrons, and if you want to join the show with us, just head to the Patreon link in the description. You can come on. I think it's on the $5 tier. You can come on the show and hang out with us and give your opinion on AI, all that kind of stuff. Patreon.com/audionautic. But let's get Lars in. Lars, how's it going? Sorry, I forgot to ask if you were ready, but I was watching you in the green room and you were just staring at the screen. So I was like, hopefully he's watching us.
Okay. First of all,
there they are.
Smiling Air. Hey.
Oh yeah, there we go. There we go. Proof of life.
He's real.
He's real. He's there.
Or at least I'm convincing enough.
Yeah, maybe you're like a secret update that's a couple years off in reality, or for us, but it exists already. Skynet.
Time traveling AI made by the CIA.
There you go. All right. Well, let's start talking with the news. So, do we want to go with the Spin or do we want to go with Audacity first? I think Spin, but I want to hear from you guys. Yeah, Spin. All right. So we'll start with Spin. So, Curtis, if you'd be so kind to load up that Vimeo, I'll give a quick bit of what. Well, I don't honestly know what this thing is. It looks like a vinyl mixed with an MPC or with one of those MIDI controllers Curtis has, but it's something very different than what it looks like. So let's check it out. We might want to watch the whole video because it gives some sound demos and stuff. Yeah, I think it's 2 minutes, isn't it?
1 minute 44.
All right, so we're both kind of right. If you round up, it's 2. All right, so let's check out this video.
All right.
Oh, I'm not sure there's sound. Are you is it muted? There it is. This one. So yeah, I think that's enough of it to show what. I love what was it, the death metal piano chorus or whatever. Like I was mentioning when we were talking about this before we went live, the artifacting you hear in AI sampling and AI samples is so interesting to me. There's like this weird, I don't even know how to describe it, but whenever I hear something that's AI generated, it has this like almost MP3 like quality to it, where there's this just noise in it and stuff. It's interesting. But so let me read a little bit about this. So Spin is a music generation and playback interface that resembles a combination of a turntable and MPC. allows control over music parameters through a DVS, digital vinyl system, enabling actions like slowing down, zooming in, scratching, and listening between notes. That's what when the video they were controlling the vinyl. It serves multiple purposes, functioning as a tool for creating new compositions, a simple sound synthesizer, scratch tool, and platform for generative background music. It looks like operates by taking input prompts in the form of button presses through an Arduino Mega, which are then sent via serial to a Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi communicates with the Music Gen API, a single language model designed for high quality music creation based on text descriptions or melodies. So that's when you're triggering like happy, lo-fi, drums. The output from Music Gen is received as an MP3 file, which also might be some of the artifacting, loaded onto a digital vinyl system involving a transmuted Newmark PT01 turntable and a time-coded control vinyl record. So, yeah, trippy. I mean, I wanted to bring this because really, like, first of all, it's an interesting thing on its own, whether it's good or bad. It's just interesting to see that this has been created. But I have two things that I want to talk about. So we can discuss either or we can discuss both. But the first is, do you think this is just kind of like a novelty? Like, oh, look, music generation with the little vinyl controller and you get to set it. Or does this intrigue anyone enough to think this is, I want this in my workflow? And then the second thing I want to talk about or would like to bring up is this a sign of what is to come, more AI music generation? And what does that mean for independent artists? So let's start with Lars, because I know Lars has a lot to say. Which of these would you want to talk about, at least talk about first?
Okay.
Doom and gloom or slightly just more workflow related?
I can't do doom and gloom because I have to be honest. It's like, I don't hate this.
I hear
don't
you.
hate it. But it's for one, I think there's something off about this though, because I was like, I'm looking through the website. There's nothing listed about like when it may go for sale or like when they're going to like produce or anything. So part of me thinks this is just like one of those kind of like art projects or like a statement or something, But I think it is kind of cool. I think because Smiling Errors put in a comment here that says actual synthesis, not a rompler. And I was actually thinking that from the very first time you guys showed me this, because it's just like, well, what if it's not actually AI? What if this guy just loaded a bunch of loops into a box and you hit the button? So one, I'm not even convinced it's real. But two, if it is real, I wouldn't mind having one actually. That looks like
let me look up this Music Gen API, because it's saying that's the language model, which at least from my knowledge of AI terminology, that would be the AI part of it. So let me just Google that really quick. Sorry to interrupt you there.
Is it an API in the traditional sense, as in an application programming interface, which just gives you access to something via code?
So it looks like API reference meta/music gen, generate music from a prompt or melody by replicate. So if it is a language model like that, then that would be generating. I don't know. I'm not speaking from any place of authority on this. Like, this is all above my head. I'm just doing quick Google searches, and I thought this looked cool. I know what you mean, Lars. But even if it is a not actually to release or something like that, if it's legit and actually is what it seems to be, where you're setting prompts and it's generating these things, even if it's not released, I mean, does this mean like it exists? It can exist. It can be mass produced, so even if it's not this one, something.
I mean, if it was something that eventually gets mass produced, it's like, I hate to admit it, but I wouldn't mind having it, just because like, I like to use a lot of loops and samples and stuff. And it's like, it seems like this one just kind of generates a loop or sample on the fly. And then you have the cool little like digital vinyl controller that you can mess with, and then just run it into a bunch of effects. Like, I could make so much awesome noise with this, is what I'm trying to say.
I love that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's kind of what I was thinking. That's why I wanted to ask that first question about like, would something like this have its place in your workflow?
Probably, yes. But it's also like, I don't know, it's just a little sus to me,
Just I I hear you. And Smiling Ears wants to really know about how it generates sound. I'm not sure. You'd have to look into it. It looks like Music Gen is actually, if this is the one, and I'm doing quick Google searches while we're live and hosting it, but it looks like Music Gen was created by Meta, Facebook. So you'd have to look into that. You'd have to look into that if all my quick Google searches, but it says Music Gen by Meta. I'm not sure. I'm not giving objective answers here. It's just these are quick searches while we are live. I'll try to look into it more, but if you find something Smiling Ears, look into it. But there's things like Output. It's a plugin company, but you can create vinyl sample, not vinyl, AI sample packs. You give a prompt and it creates sounds. Now, I don't know how that works either, but there are things like this where you're putting in prompts like text to music, text to audio, whatever you want to call it. So these things seem to be existing. I mean, I was telling Lars and Eon like beforehand, I put in create like happy ominous music or something, and it made these very weird, like almost Silent Hill-esque vibes or something. Like it was strange, but I don't know how it was doing it, but it does exist. So I'm not sure, Smiling Ears, to answer you, but from these searches, that's what it seems to be. So you'd have to look more into it. We'll check it out. Lars looks like he's really intrigued. I see his face moving left and right. So what'd you find, bud?
You were telling me about the AI like sample pack generator, and you're like, "Oh, Output is doing it." It's like Output is doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lars, Server Channel's got you today, man. Lars looking like he just accidentally discovered plutonium.
Nailed it.
Now I'll be on the same playing field as the rest of the countries.
All right, Eon, like, what's your take on this? We heard from Lars. Eon, like,
okay, so yeah, when you said there were two things that you wanted to talk about, I felt sure one of them was going to be those damn rubber gloves. Is it just me? I mean,
I know. Maybe it is a test model, and they don't want to do
real. I've just been chopping someone up in the bathtub vibe going on there in that video. I found quite disturbing, but they're not part of this instrument, so we'll try and forget about that and move on. I would sample it. It makes interesting noises. The beats were the feel of the beats was off in a wrong way, not in a this is hip hop.
You'll hear that with a lot of AI generated music.
It was just like it wasn't grooving, it wasn't bumping, it was kind of lurching and staggering, and it wasn't good.
It sounded like the snares were hitting at different times too. Like sometimes it was on the 2, sometimes it was on the 3. It was
pretty loose. It sounded like somebody who can't play trying to play rather than
me on the drums.
You can play playing loose.
They sampled me on the drums, yeah.
But I mean, presumably there'd be money involved. Presumably it needs to be connected to the internet, I think, to access some larger computing
probably, yeah,
power or something. I'd go around a mate's house and sample it maybe, but it's not for me. And to your second question, I do really seriously, people, can we stop making AI do the fun stuff and make it do the dull stuff? For God's sake.
I hear you.
Making music's fun. Why the hell do you want to get AI to do it? Why do they keep doing this? I suppose it's a challenge because of the elusiveness of the concept of art and what art is and so on. Makes it a bit of a target in that regard, that you could make it do something like make a circuit board. You can that's robot, that's not AI. If you can make it do art, then it's AI. It all seems to come from that, but I just think we can't be giving AI all the fun jobs to do. What are we going to do?
Yeah,
art is the expression of the soul. I mean,
it's true.
There'll be a lot of frustrated people if they can't work out their angst through art.
I mean, the one thing is though, like, listen to those songs, right? Like it's not good, like for sampling purposes. Yeah, it could be cool to sample that, but it's not like, oh, this moves me, emotionally, like when I listen to something by so and so or whatever. And it could happen as AI keeps growing. Maybe it will happen. Me personally, I don't ever think, at least in the way AI is now, and I'm not making this as a final statement, it's always changing, but I don't think it will get as where it's going now. It might take a long time, or it will never get to where it can make music in that way or make art in that way. I don't know.
Oh, I think it might, but
Maybe in a long time, or well, it does grow exponentially.
Maybe just like, you know, background sync music and stuff like that could be done
That I think
relatively.
is already happening. Also, I don't know if anybody's noticed, but if you go on YouTube and you get hit with ads, a lot of ads are AI voice now.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
can
I've
tell
noticed
because
a lot
the
of
phrasing's always very monotone, even if they try to do inflections and stuff like
You can
there's
tell.
always that strange artifacting to it. But there's
It's
also a
more
lot of channels.
irritating as well,
There's a
isn't it?
lot of channels doing shorts where it's literally just AI voices now.
I think if you're not even going to get somebody to say the words, to me it stinks of like incredible laziness. Really.
Speaking of lazy, right? It's so funny because I can see AI being used in two very different ways. One is like that lazy route or whatever you want to call it, where taking away all that stuff, and the other would be kind of like what Lars was saying, and you were like taking it as these Genesis points, or like Curtis did with the Beach Bum, like using there wasn't AI necessarily. I mean, you used AI for the chords, right? But that kind of way, like use it as this Genesis point to then create from, like, oh, I'm stuck, I can't think of a chord progression today. Well, I'll just ask ChatGPT. Okay, now I don't like what it came up with, but I can use those chords as a start. Oh, maybe if I make this one a borrowed chord from a different key, or do this, like, you know, just to get past that sticking point. It's those two different, very diverging paths that I see AI going. And I mean, obviously the easier route, not easier like good, but the most people will probably go oh, I can just use this to make the voice. I don't have to do voiceover. I can just generate sync music, you know, and do this and that.
Yeah.
Curtis, I mean, you worked with AI music what, a year or two ago, you know. I guess in its quote infancy, whatever have you, it was probably different sounding than even now. But
Lars discovered now.
Oh no, more plutonium. But
hang on just a second, guys.
No worries. Here, I'll take you off. Just let me know when you're ready. Curtis, what's your take on this? If you want to answer both questions like Ian Lake and Lars did, go ahead. The first was, is it novelty or does it have some use in your own workflow? Second is sign of what's to come or more AI music generation. Is it a sign of what's to come? And what does it mean for the indie musician? And chat, feel free to chime in as well if you have any opinions on either of these questions.
I think I don't think it has a space in my workflow. I don't, just to be off the bat. In a similar vein, if it happened to be plonked in front of me, I'd like to sample it just to see what it does. I'd play with it for half an hour, get bored, and go back to Ableton because Ableton's amazing. It's very wonky in the fact that so one of the benefits of what people like about AI generated music is that you can make a lot of it. And instead of making, say, a track a day, you might be making 20 tracks a day, 25 tracks a day. And that's the thing. It's about quantity. And these companies using this, they're using it for quantity, not quality. This does neither quality nor quantity at this stage. I mean, as you can hear, it's all a bit wonky, not in a good way. It took some minutes to kind of get it done and stuff like that. And so in my regard, I feel like it's a bit more of an artistic installation, which checks out with the guy's bio. I don't see the mass appeal in the longevity. There's a part of me while you were talking was this notion of, everyone's a creative, but some people struggle to unleash their creativity and kind of take those first steps into being vulnerable enough to be artistic. Maybe this could act as a certain bridge in the very primitive, very beginnings of I push a button, music is made. Ooh, I can perhaps do something with this. Maybe. But then
is that a big problem, do you think, though, that needs to be solved?
Good question.
It's a good question. Yeah, I think so. In my experience running around with certain people, there are certain people I've come into my existence who are just they just don't believe that they've got any ability to be creative, and that's obviously that's like an inner thing, and that kind of needs to be worked through. I wouldn't say a lot, but for those people that I have experienced, that makes me sad, and I want to help them. So that could be a way, but that's a massive kind of that's a leap here. I think it is artistic. I think it is more of a gimmick and doesn't really have a place for me. If I'm going to use AI stuff, I'm going to use it. I'm going to use the AI stuff I've already got. Really more effective in that regard.
Well, I think the question bridges to even beyond just this piece of gear, right? Like it's kind of what I'm getting at too is just like this in general, right? Like any sort of AI music generation, whatever have you, like those sample packs I was talking about, stuff like that. That's what I wanted to bring up. I echo and slightly think slightly different, but also understand where he's coming from, where they're coming from. Smiling Error says AI will become part of every musician's toolkit very soon. It will flood the market and lower the entry costs in exactly the same way that software studios did. The best will work out how to get something out of it that sounds different, better, no different to what samplers did. And I was going to bring that up because I mean, like, just over the weekend, I sampled vinyl on my SP and made a song, and then took little single notes of it and used it chromatic to play piano, like on the sampler, but on top of this thing I chopped up and stuff. So that's kind of like where I was getting at with, does it find a way into your workflow? Like those sample packs I was talking about, you get those and you can create, put it in chromatic mode and you've got this crazy new synth sound or something. Sorry, I got carried away. The last thing Smiling Ear says, just annoys me because I learned how to play instruments. See, I get it. And this is what I wanted to bring up. I think there will also, like, it's happening kind of now with streaming. It's happening with all kinds of stuff, but it's like, as it gets bigger and stuff, I think there will also be the reactionary aspect of people going, I want to hear the real deal. I want to see someone playing all those guitars or something. And I don't think the two exist mutually exclusive. Like Curtis or we sometimes will build off of a sample, but put our own music and performances on top of it. So just because you learned an instrument, it doesn't negate that fact having this. I get where you're coming from. I'm not disagreeing with you, Smiling Ears. I'm just saying, like, I think the good stuff still will come through, especially as the floodgates are open and all this AI nonsense comes out. I think people will start hearing, oh, this sounds so similar. It's at least some will. I'm not saying the general population like that, but I don't know. I think there's always going to be a place for genuine music, real music. But yeah, I think we'll see AI integrated in all kinds of ways, and I think it will become prevailing and all that. Lars, you look like you have a counterpoint. Please go on.
Go on.
I mean, the AI, like, because like what Curtis was saying, they're wanting to use it because you can generate a lot all at once, and that's kind of like, it's been this whole like conflict between like art and like making money. The best way
commercial versus art, right?
Exactly. The best way I can think about it is like, so like the AI image generation has been around for a while now, and I'm sure like pretty much everyone has played with it, myself included. So the thing is, it's like I've seen a lot of these, and like the best reaction I've ever gotten from any of them for myself is just like, oh, that looks kind of cool. It's not like any piece of art I've looked at and like I just kind of stare at it and it's just like, oh, I feel some kind of emotional connection to this for some reason. Pretty much anything I've seen that's AI generated, it doesn't generate any kind of emotional response for me. It's more like oh, that looks cool.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at, is like, I think if it does become this prevailing thing and sync music and stuff, maybe I'm just an optimist, but I think people will search out the real because it's interesting, but it won't have that emotional response that like someone who's sitting at a guitar and letting out all their worries and stresses and stuff. Like, it hits different. I don't know. And maybe we're optimistic, but that's just kind of, at least as the trajectory it's on now, that's kind of what I was getting at, is it doesn't seem like for now it'll get there. Yeah.
It just, everything AI kind of makes right now is just very generic and derivative for the most part.
It is early days though too, right? So who knows?
True, yeah.
Who knows?
I mean, when a machine can actually like create an emotional response in humans, that's when the Terminator times start. Okay, I'm just letting y'all know, they're in our heads. They got us.
Yeah.
Keep that plutonium handy, Lars. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, you look like before Lars started talking. Did you have something else you wanted to say?
I was just thinking of setting up an electronic duo of where it's half AI, half human. I'll be human. Obviously.
There you go.
My AI alter ego, and then we can argue in the studio, and
yeah, never get anything done, right?
Argue about royalties.
Yeah.
You're a T800, aren't you?
But yeah, first sort of double header, half human, half AI.
If you
Really
think we're getting screwed over by royalties, wait till AI comes along. They're going to be royally screwed.
Yeah, that's true.
It's okay. You can pay them in cryptocurrency, right?
Just pay them in pixels. It's all good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. It is at the very least, it is another exploration into what AI can offer. And as Smiling Area said, it's no going back. We just have to learn to work with it. And it's true. And there are many things to take from it. I don't think there's any use in just kind of going, yeah. It's here. It's part of it. It's like people did the same thing when the printing press came out, and look where we are now. And that's okay. That's fine. We're just gonna keep on going. And if we want to make art traditionally, you can do that. If you want to utilize AI, you can do that. At the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is the art and the expression of one's soul, and how you do that. Really, there's no right or wrong way to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the best way to put it for sure. Because I think using it as a tool is a great way if it helps you, like we were saying, get through a sticking point, right? So and there's always going to be some form of abuse of the way it works and stuff. Like they will use it for commercial music or something, but if it helps you create and speak from your soul, then great, I just want to read this from Jonathan. I think Lars is just trying to throw us off the scent that he is the AI behind it all. Yeah. Well, that's why we have him here, That's why he's here. Yeah.
Oh, I am Sora. Oh, I feel beautiful.
All right, I know we ran a little long, but we did start late. But do we want to talk quickly about this Audacity? More AI, but slightly different in context.
I'd be keen to tickle it. It's been sitting there for a while.
Let's cover it real quick. Let's cover it.
Yeah.
Really quickly though, I see this from Jonathan. I just want to read it off because this is I like hearing everybody's opinions about AI. I think there will always be a difference between the skill and humanity of a real performer and the potential cold mechanical process of an AI. Yeah, I mean I think that's kind of where we're all at. Just will be interesting to see as AI continues to grow whether that will stay the case. I tend to think it will, but I don't know. Because I know, like Lars was saying, every time he sees an AI image, it's like, oh, cool, But
cool.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll just have to see. But I appreciate everybody sharing their take on it. And if you want to talk more about spin or anything like that, put it in the Discord. Now let's talk about Audacity. Now you did this one, so I see you shared it. Let me share it to screen and then tell us about Audacity.
Just right across Eon Lake's face.
Right over Eon. Wait, what if we do this? Try it now. Oh no, I guess when there's 4 people, when you do this other. All right, so tell us about Audacity. It's got to be pretty old, right? Very old. I used that. That was my first piece of recording software in like what 2005 or 6, something like that.
I love it. I love it. I love Audacity. I think it's great.
Yeah,
open source, awesome. Simple. Voiceover artists use it quite a lot. It's really intuitive. It's really good. Guy making it is dope. Love Audacity. It can't. It's great.
Yeah. When did that come out? Do you know offhand, Eon Lake? Do you know? I know you were saying you used it a long time or something. That's why I was saying.
No, I don't. But it's always been free, hasn't it? I'm sure it's got a PayPal that you can show some love to if you've used it a lot, like I have.
It does.
Right, let's check this out.
Yeah. Well, let me bring. I was doing. I went on a tangent, but yes. So basically, Audacity went into disarray, and then now it's coming back with a new head. This guy who he has a YouTube channel as well. It's really cool, really interesting. Can't remember his name. Someone can help, maybe. So Audacity is getting for free. It's open source. It's getting stem separation and an automatic text to transcription tool, which is a really, really cool, nice idea. This has been around for a while. It's not exactly news. This was published on the 6th, but it's been in the back of our docket for a while. And we wanted to bring this to your attention because
Oh,
look
the
how
old school.
lovely, look at that
There it
lovely
is.
overlay.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I'll never forget that.
Exactly.
What a beautiful sight.
It is, isn't it? It's wonderful. Yeah, this is another company that are running with the whole stem separation thing, which is a trend that we've kind of been seeing come over the past couple of months, especially since the start of the year. We looked at the NPC who were doing it. FL Studios have brought it in.
We've been longer than that, though. I mean, we covered RipX last year. Koala Sampler has it last year. Serato Studio even last year. So it's been slowly growing, and now we're really seeing it this year. I think we're going to see it kind of everywhere, as we already are.
Yeah, as it says here, stem separation is a feature that's becoming more and more commonplace.
Yeah.
But an increasing number of DAWs and online packages are doing it for you. So yes, it's been around for a while and it's been there, but it's kind of recent. I wouldn't say I don't like the phrase blown up recently. I don't like that, but it is becoming more commonplace, to borrow the phrase of that. But it's becoming more accepted and stuff as well. People are experimenting a bit more, which is really cool. And now you can get it for free in Audacity, which I think is a wonderful piece of.
And does it do the same if you know of the 4 splits? Like that's all it splits to? Vocals, drums, bass, and
instrumentation, vocals.
Yeah, I still would really, and maybe it's not possible, at least not yet, but I would love to see some stem separation that splits it even further. And like I said, maybe just not possible yet, but that's my hope. I have a feeling we're going to see it soon in Logic, because Logic's adding some AI stuff. They added it basically ozone type master. So I have a feeling Logic's going to get it at some point. That's my suspicion. Because I think Apple's been maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I had read Apple's experimenting with AI, this and that. And I mean, I know it's just Logic, a small little piece of Apple, but I wouldn't be surprised because they add a lot of stuff to Logic. But it's cool to see in Audacity something free. Is Audacity on Apple, on Mac?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it is. Okay,
completely open source.
I gotta get it again.
It's great.
I should say.
Yeah.
And Lars, were you saying it came out in 2000? I saw this. Wow.
Yep.
Okay. Very interesting.
It's 24 years old now, guys.
Wow. That's crazy.
Wow.
Jonathan says, I often use Audacity just to make some quick effects rather than automating. That is very interesting. Very interesting.
I just want, if I may, I just want to share this from the Wikipedia page. This is what 3.3. It has not changed much at all, as you can see here. It's very much as it looks.
It's that familiar look.
Oh, this is interesting. In the notes we've got, it says the plugin, Open Vino AI toolkit is what they brought in. The plugins include music generation and music style remix, utilizing stable diffusion AI model to create new music or remix existing music. So it is adding generation as well. Music separation breaks down songs into vocal or instrumental parts. Stem separation. Yeah, I'm just reading through what our notes has. Additional AI features in Audacity include noise suppression, whisper transcription for transcribing spoken word audio, all running locally on the user's PC.
Well, there you go. They're democratizing it. They're really creating a thing. Audionaut had a really big reaction to that. I want to know what that was all about.
Do you need music generation? I don't know. And I was also reading Survey Channel's comment about maybe it forked, and it's feeling like it did. I lost track of Audacity, and the assumption is it's the same people, but maybe it did fork, and this is a new life for the product and so on. But yeah,
they got taken over recently again.
But yeah, music creation and remixing and so on. Again, we're getting it to do the fun stuff. Get it to wash the damn dishes, please. So
load the dishes too. That'd be nice.
Exactly. Yeah, everything to do with dishes, apart from eating the food off them.
Yeah.
Don't forget.
So Richino says, but if they're actively developing it, because sorry, I put this one up, I didn't read it. Thought they stopped updating Audacity, or is it a fork taken up by new developers? I haven't kept up. I use Audition, but if they're actively developing it, I'll switch, I think. And then Jonathan says the music separation would be interesting to see how well that works. Certainly if it'll be free. Yeah, I'm very curious to see, because like we covered, RipX has really clear stem separation, but it's paid. Koala Sampler, which is paid but not that expensive. There's a lot of artifacting with it. Serato Studio, which had free stem separation, but I'm not sure if it still does. That thing is very clean. I actually had to use it to get stems from one of the tracks on my album for a remixer, and it worked great. But yeah, so interesting. I'm very curious to hear what type of stem separation, what the quality will be. Similar, echoing what Jonathan said. It's very interesting. Anything you guys want to add to this before we move on to the last topic?
It's the last topic, isn't it?
No.
Oh, I always forget the last segment of the day.
Gotta trust the producer, man.
I think it's just interesting. We're going to be doing a bit more of a thing about stem separation in the coming months. We're going to be looking at different outlets where you can get it. For example, I've got FL. Audition does it to a degree. There's Serato Studios, there's Audacity, and there's one on Koala, like
Ripex, Koala,
Ripex, sorry, yeah.
MPC now, even, which none of us. Well, actually, Eon Lake has MPC, but I don't know if it's out yet. But that would be interesting to see, my friend.
Not trying to update yet.
Okay.
Well, we're gonna be sitting on this for a little bit, a couple of weeks. Oh, here comes the hardware. First bit of hardware of the day.
But it's not gold, man. It's not gold. It's an MPC.
Ooh.
I think he has the retro one, right? The retro coloring. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
I still would love an MPC one of these days. They're
Me
cool.
too. Me too. We're going to be over the next couple of weeks. Samwalker and I are going to be doing a shootout. Essentially, we're going to be taking different software, putting it together, putting it out to the patrons, getting ideas, creating this kind of idea. Because there is more than ever, if you are working through certain pieces of software and stem separation is a thing, and you like your sampling, which most of us tend to do at some stage or other. Kalimba for the win. That's what we need.
Everybody's showing their gear. I thought
we've got this notion of where do we go? Where are we going to put our money? Is it worth paying for stem separation? Is it worth having a look?
Is it even
How much
worth
do you pay?
doing stem separation?
Yeah, is it worth doing it? So we're going to kind of be looking into this over the next couple of weeks, and we're going to come and do a little bit of a deep dive in stem separation, do a bit of a shootout. If you want to be along for the ride before we bring it to the show, maybe come down to the Patreon Discord and have a look over there. And we'll be taking you along that journey before we bring it to you guys over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we'll be sharing kind of the stems we split, using each of them, and we're going to hear from everybody about which one they think is the cleanest, best in general. All that. It's going to be interesting to see what is the preferred or best stem separation out of all of these and the different pay scales and all that type of stuff. Eon, like, were you saying you're downloading? I can't remember if the update came out publicly with the stem separation, or did you buy it?
There is an update available. Is what I have to plug it in to update it, but
okay, because I think you have to pay to get the stem split.
Oh, okay.
I think it's like 10 or 15 bucks, but if you do get it, we can cover it in the shootout, but that's up to you.
I'll let you know if I do.
Yeah. It sounds, from what I've seen in the videos, it sounds pretty clean, but
if it can separate stems from my stuff, I'll be impressed.
There you go. That's the true litmus test, right? Yeah, there you go. Jonathan says the very limited Eon Lake 1000 edition of the MPC.
Wow.
This is interesting. Smiling Air says, imagine being able to ask your AI to comb your sample library and list all 3 kicks that overlap well for impact sound, mid qualities, and fade decay qualities. Yeah,
I love that.
There's a lot of interesting. That's what I was trying to say earlier. There's a lot of interesting ways to integrate the usage of AI. Not just to streamline the production, but to get rid of, like, kind of like what Eon Lake was saying, do the dishes, get rid of the not so fun parts, like looking for samples and this and that. Like, there is some interesting potential for it, but there's also, of course, potential for it to go completely off in the other direction.
For some reason we seem to be getting this "here's a dog on a skateboard" thing over and over and over.
Well, that's what gets viral clicks, right? But the actual uses is kind of for you to figure out, because it's there, right? Like, I use ChatGPT for a lot of different things when it comes to scheduling, creating things, doing, like, just helping come up with thumbnail ideas or title ideas that you then finesse. And, like, you'd never just be like, give me a title. It's like, I'm thinking of doing X topic. with this type of context. Here's the intro I made, and then see what it creates, and you go from there. And then you can just kind of build off of it and stuff. So it streamlines processes, which has really helped for me personally. So I think there's a lot of potential for it. And yeah, a lot of potential for misuse, abuse, whatever you want to call it. Lastly, for Jonathan, I wish AI could digitize my vinyl library for me, as I've got so many and I've not got enough time. If it could noise reduce them too, that would be a plus. But the noise is all part of it.
Yeah.
What about removing the noise, adding your own digital noise?
Or maybe it could sample it with the noise and then remove the noise.
And then noise removed. Yeah, there you go. Get both. All right, well, let's go to the final topic at hand. But we always do this topic. Curtis just always seems to forget. But what are we up to this week, musically, all that? Eon Lake, besides checking out the MPC update, what are you up to?
Yeah. I have been rediscovering my Eurorack stuff. Look,
Nice.
It's had a haircut. I haven't been able to see all those lights for a long time. There was an absolute mass of cables on it. It took me a while to get them all off. I'm going to be doing some different stuff with it. I've got it patched now so that I can send anything from Ableton through my digital mixer across to that, run it through whatever I want, and back out again into my mixer and back into Ableton, so I can, have beads on anything I like. Running
There you go.
Morphogene. So there's a lot of stuff that I want to mess around with on that. So yeah, overdubbing, but using Eurorack mainly to do it.
You never stop. Every week it's overdubbing.
Well, maximalist.
Jonathan thought you were making it. Jonathan thought you were making an Eon Lake 2000 MPC, but yeah, that's once he gets the update.
Yeah.
Once he gets the update, yeah. Lars, what are you up to this week musically?
So, if I remember correctly, somebody's sending me some stems so I can do another remix.
That's right. Shots fired, man.
No, all good, all good.
No, dude, I gave you the stems for the first one, and the next day he's like, "Here you go." I still haven't even had time to listen to it, and in that time, you took like 60 tracks and made a whole. And then he's like, "Can you send me another?" I'm like, "Well,
and you're not an AI, Lars."
No, I'm just a hyper fixated human being. I promise.
Caffeine and hyperfixation. Yeah. All right, but besides that, what else are you up to? Because I have to get you those stems first.
Of course.
What's plan B?
Say what?
What's plan B?
Plan B.
Get your stems.
I'm going to spend the rest of my week fighting with my computer to try and free up space while I desperately avoid upgrading my computer.
That old game, eh?
Yes, I never want to upgrade my computer because that means I have to reinstall like 100 VSTs, all of my software.
You have so many plugins, dude. Go. I don't even want to imagine. And if any have iLock, have fun with that, man.
I've done really great about avoiding anything with iLock. I scroll down on everything before I buy it. It's like, does it use iLock? Oh, it uses iLock. I don't care if it's $10. I'm not buying this.
That's the way to just stop your gear acquisition syndrome or plugin acquisition. Just it's iLock. Oh, not gonna get it. All right. Well, that's a good week.
Manufacturers that, please.
You don't need any more plugins, man. I think you're set for a long time.
Come on, man, I need more. Come on.
Yeah. Well, while you sort that one out, let's see what Curtis is up to this week. What are you up to?
I have last weekend I downloaded every track that I've made and released into the world, and I've been building a DJ set of my own stuff, and I will continue to do that. I think.
I was thinking about doing that.
Great minds think alike. Yeah, I brought my decks back from school, as you can see there, and
what?
I've never seen that side. I thought that was a wall to your right.
Yeah,
that's my bed.
I had no idea the room went that.
Yeah. It goes right round. You can see. There you go. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I brought my decks home. I lent them to a middle school kid, and he finally gave them back after a while of experimenting, getting into DJing himself. And I have got a big playlist of all my tracks. I've synced them all up. I've done the whole beat matching thing and all that, and I've been building a set. And if I was to go on, say, and do a DJ set of Curtis tracks, how would that manifest? So yeah, that's what I'll be doing. I'm going to continue that. It's frustratingly fun. It's good fun.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So that's me. What about you, Sam? What are you up to?
Well, the first thing is I need to speak to a certain person that's on this live stream about remixing a track because I didn't get to, because I meant to when I was sick and then didn't. So looks like he knows. So that's first on my list. As soon as we end, I'll be talking to him. Then after that, not much. I work mostly on the weekend, so what I was up to this week was basically what I did on the weekend, and that was I did a live stream and flipped vinyl for the first time, which was a lot of fun. But the live stream was plagued with internet issues, so I unlisted it and then edited it, added some extra context, like really finishing the track, adding a lot of variety with the pattern sequencing, making all these different patterns and all that, and then put the video up. And it's been getting some good response, so it was fun. It was I missed using just the SP because it had been a long time since I had done that, and I definitely felt a little sloppy on it, like it's dusting off the cobwebs, but it was nice. I still think I prefer the Digitac mixed with the SP, like the sequencer and the Digitac once it clicks, which I still don't think I've fully learned, but I really like that. But so yeah, the reason I wanted to do that is, though, kind of like how you're building a DJ set, I really want to build a full performance set on the SP. Like using chromatic mode, trying to use it as an instrument while playing, but using, instead of like DJing or triggering tracks or just playing little parts of a track, I want to use the pattern sequencer to, like, someone had commented in one of my performance videos, this really interesting idea of using the pattern sequencer almost as like a live looper and triggering all these different things, and you can just kind of like build on it. And that had me thinking, because there's a song mode, so you can set the patterns to play at a certain, like, okay, do this pattern twice, do this pattern. So you can kind of have it set. Could be really interesting to build it in that way. So that's what I'm looking into this week, is like figuring that whole pattern idea. I'll talk about it more as I flesh it out. And then just now that I've gotten into the vinyl sampling, I really want to look into the differences between AI sample packs and vinyl sampling, and like all the murkiness with copyright that comes with both, right? And just like using them, and just it just really intrigues me, the differences, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's my research for the week.
I like that. That's what you need. It's it's nice to hear what people are up to in the chat as well. SC's got a new laptop, which is always fun. Always fun bringing.
So new DAW and new laptop, huh? Survey channel. Interesting.
Survey's growing. Survey is growing.
That'd be too much for me at once. Too much change. We fear change. No, that's cool.
Everything has changed. Everything has changed. But yeah, that's us. That's cool. We should get skedaddling, as they say. It's been a great show. Thank you so much for coming on again, Lars. It's always wonderful hanging out with you and seeing what you're up to in this world.
I love playing hooky from work.
There you go.
Yay!
You are live, so they'll know the timestamp if they happen to find you.
Nobody knows my social stuff.
There you go. I should add the Audionautic radio playlist is coming back. It's getting a big refresh. If you have some music on Spotify, it is just on Spotify, unfortunately, but that we talked with everybody and wanted to keep going, so we're going to bring it back. So yeah, go to the Discord. Link is in the description. It's free for anyone to join the Discord. Patrons just get some exclusive channels, but submit. We have a whole channel on there for submitting to the playlist. And then lastly, Starstream, our patron hangout, is this Sunday. So if you want to hang out, talk more about Ableton, DAW stuff, crazy envelope followers, whatever is on your mind musically or anything related, AI, that's what we'll be talking about. So head to the Patreon, patreon.com/audionautic if you want to join.
Plutonium.
Yeah, plutonium, the discovery of plutonium on Lars's discovery. Lastly, we got a couple more. Jonathan got a few weird projects going on, trying to make an IDM track out of stuff that's not IDM material, such as sea shanty style IDM. That's crazy. That sounds very interesting. But yeah, we love hearing what everybody's up to. And by all means, Jonathan, if you get something done, share it to the Discord. We love to hear all that kind of stuff. So with that, we will call it a day. We'll be back next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific, and we'll see our patrons on Sunday at 11 a.m. But thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.